the motorcade that never arrived, the briefing that was suddenly canceled, the phone calls that went straight to voicemail. In the heart of Washington, D.C., where every movement is tracked, every breath is monitored, and every second is accounted. For something unprecedented happened. The most powerful person in the free world simply vanished. It started with whispers in the corridors of power. Staff members exchanging nervous glances. Secret Service agents with furrowed brows speaking in hushed, urgent tones. The morning briefing was postponed, then the afternoon meeting. By evening, the official schedule had been cleared entirely, replaced only with a cryptic statement. The president is attending to urgent matters. But what urgent matters require a complete communications blackout? What crisis demands such absolute secrecy that even the vice president appears to be operating in the dark? The stock markets began to tremble. Foreign leaders started making anxious phone calls. Allies questioned whether America's leadership structure had collapsed overnight. In the digital age, disappearing is nearly impossible. Yet somehow, in an era where satellites can track a penny dropped from space, where social media broadcasts every mundane detail of our lives, the President of the United States had achieved the impossible. No tweets, no public appearances, no leaked photos from staff. Even the most connected Washington insiders were drawing blanks. The questions multiplied faster than answers. Was this a medical emergency being covered up? A security threat so severe it required complete isolation? Or something far more sinister? As hours turned to days, speculation ran wild. Foreign intelligence agencies scrambled for information. The global balance of power hung in suspended animation. Today, we dive deep into the most mysterious disappearance in modern political history. We'll examine the evidence, analyze the theories, and attempt to answer the question that has the entire world holding its breath. Where is the president? And what does this mean for the future of American democracy? Before we begin, if you're as fascinated by these political mysteries as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what we uncover next. The morning of March 15th began like any other at the White House. Staff arrived at their usual times. Security protocols were standard, and the president's schedule appeared normal to outside observers. But according to sources close to the administration, something was already amiss behind the scenes. The first red flag came during the daily intelligence briefing. For a president known for his unpredictable schedule and frequent last-minute changes, this particular absence felt different. The briefing room, normally filled with the controlled chaos of urgent updates and rapid-fire questions, sat eerily quiet. Intelligence officials waited and waited. Minutes turned into an hour before they were finally dismissed without explanation. What makes this disappearance particularly puzzling is the complete breakdown of the usually ironclad communication chain. The White House operates on a system so rigid that even bathroom breaks are logged and tracked. Every phone call is monitored, every movement is coordinated with multiple agencies. Yet somehow, this system that has never failed in over 2 centuries of American governance had apparently experienced a complete malfunction. The official story began to crumble, almost immediately. Press secretary statements became increasingly vague, filled with bureaucratic language that said nothing while appearing to say something. The president is engaged in critical matters of national importance became the standard response to any inquiry. But when pressed for specifics, officials would only repeat the same hollow phrases. Meanwhile, a deeper investigation reveals troubling patterns that preceded the disappearance. Medical personnel had been seen entering the White House with unusual frequency in the weeks leading up to March 15th. Not the typical White House physician visits, but specialists whose credentials suggest expertise in neurological conditions. and emergency psychiatric interventions, the paper trail tells its own story. Executive orders that had been in various stages of preparation were suddenly put on indefinite hold. High-level meetings with foreign dignitaries were postponed with explanations so thin they bordered on insulting to international protocol. Even routine ceremonial events, the kind of photo opportunities that administrations typically embrace, were quietly canceled. But perhaps most telling of all were the changes in Secret Service deployment. Sources within the agency, speaking on condition of anonymity, describe a shift to what they term medical protection protocols, procedures typically reserved for situations where the protectee's health status poses unique security challenges. International implications of this disappearance cannot be overstated. In the modern era, America's president isn't just a national leader but the cornerstone of global stability. Financial markets depend on predictable American leadership. Military alliances require consistent communication. Trade agreements need steady negotiation. When that leadership suddenly vanishes without explanation, the ripple effects spread across continents. European allies began reaching out through diplomatic channels, seeking assurance that American commitments remained intact. Asian partners, already nervous about shifting trade policies, found their concerns amplified by the communication vacuum. Even adversaries seemed confused by the sudden silence, unsure whether this represented weakness to exploit or a trap to avoid. The domestic political ramifications proved equally dramatic. Congressional leaders from both parties found themselves in the unprecedented position of being unable to fulfill their constitutional oversight responsibilities. How do you check and balance a power that has seemingly evaporated? Opposition politicians face the delicate challenge of criticizing an administration while respecting what might be a genuine medical crisis. Social media, that great democratizer of information, became a battlefield of theories and speculation. Professional journalists competed with amateur investigators, each trying to piece together fragments of information into a coherent narrative. Some theories bordered on the fantastical, involving everything from alien abduction to voluntary exile. Others focused on more mundane but equally troubling possibilities: cognitive decline, family intervention, or palace coup. The medical theory gained traction as anonymous. Sources began leaking details about the president's behavior in the weeks leading up to the disappearance. Reports of confusion during meetings, difficulty recognizing longtime staff members, and episodes of disorientation painted a picture of someone struggling with serious health issues. If true, these revelations would raise profound questions about the transparency of presidential health reporting and the mechanisms in place to handle executive incapacity. But the medical explanation, while plausible, doesn't account for all the evidence. The sophisticated nature of the information. Blackout suggests careful planning rather than emergency response. Someone with access to the highest levels of government clearly orchestrated this disappearance, removing not just the president, but all traces of presidential activity from public view. This level of coordination points to involvement by people with intimate knowledge of White House operations, Secret Service protocols, and media management. Such a conspiracy would require the cooperation of dozens of individuals across multiple agencies, all maintaining perfect silence under enormous pressure. The family angle adds another layer of complexity to the mystery. Presidential families typically maintain some level of public visibility even during crises. Yet in this case, immediate family members have been equally absent from public view. No carefully worded statements expressing concern, no strategic appearances designed to project stability. The entire inner circle has seemingly vanished along with the president. Intelligence agencies face their own dilemmas in this situation. Protecting the president includes protecting information about the president, even when that information might be crucial for public understanding. The tension between transparency and security has never been more apparent, with agencies forced to choose between democratic accountability and what they perceive as national security requirements. International intelligence services are undoubtedly working overtime to understand what has happened. America's friends want assurance that their partner remains stable and reliable. America's adversaries want to understand whether this represents an opportunity or a threat. The intelligence community's silence only amplifies these concerns. As days pass without resolution, the constitutional questions become increasingly urgent. The 25th Amendment provides mechanisms for handling presidential incapacity, but those mechanisms require acknowledgement that incapacity exists. If the president's inner circle maintains that everything is normal while providing no evidence to support that claim, the system enters uncharted territory. The longer this situation continues, the more it exposes weaknesses in our democratic system that most Americans never considered. We've built elaborate checks and balances for preventing abuse of power, but we've given less thought to what happens when power simply disappears. The Founding Fathers couldn't have anticipated a scenario where the president could effectively vanish in the digital age. The mystery of the presidential disappearance represents more than just a political crisis or media story. It reveals fundamental questions about power, transparency, and trust in democratic institutions. Whether the explanation ultimately proves to be medical, political, or something else entirely, the precedent being set will influence how future crises are handled. The American people deserve answers, but more importantly, they deserve a system robust enough to provide those answers, even in extraordinary circumstances. Until we understand what happened during those missing days, questions will persist about the stability of our democratic institutions and the mechanisms we rely on to ensure continuity of government. The truth, whatever it may be, will eventually emerge. When it does, it will likely reshape our understanding of presidential power and the limits of official secrecy in a democratic society.